It started like any other Thursday night. Elena Cruz had just clocked in at Valenti's, Miami's most exclusive restaurant, the kind of place where power wore silk and secrets smelled like expensive wine. The dining room shimmered under soft gold lighting, jazz notes floating between the tables, and the faint rhythm of the rain tapping against the glass walls overlooking the bay. Elena adjusted her black apron, tied her hair into a low knot, and took a steadying breath. To everyone else, she was just another waitress, polite smile, graceful steps, forgettable face. But beneath that calm exterior, her mind never stopped racing. The bills, the hospital fees, her mother's medicine, every shift was survival. Still, tonight felt different. There was something in the air, heavier, slower, charged. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was the perfume. The perfume. She hadn't meant to wear it. It had been sitting untouched for weeks, wrapped in a velvet pouch inside her dresser, a crystal bottle her grandmother Isadora Cruz had given her before she died. The scent was unlike anything she'd ever known, not floral, not sweet. It was deep, smoky, like rain on old wood and amber warmed by firelight. The kind of fragrance that didn't just smell, it remembered. On her deathbed, Isadora had pressed it into her palm and whispered, "One day, someone will recognize this scent. And when they do, Elena, you'll finally understand why I kept you safe." Elena never understood what that meant. But tonight, for reasons she couldn't name, she dabbed it onto her wrists and throat before leaving home. She told herself it was for comfort. But maybe, deep down, she was waiting for that someone. By 7 o'clock, Valenti's was full, every table, every seat. Laughter danced between wine glasses, the pianist played softly, and conversations hummed like background music in a dream. Elena carried her tray of appetizers through the maze of tables, balancing silver and porcelain like she'd done 1,000 times. And that's when the door opened. He stepped in without announcement, tall, dark, and terrifyingly composed. His suit was charcoal gray, cut so precisely it looked like it obeyed him. He moved with the quiet dominance of someone used to owning the room without needing to prove it. Lorenzo De Luca. Even his name carried weight, whispered in places where truth wore shadows. Some called him the ghost of Naples. Others simply said, "You don't meet De Luca twice." He didn't glance around to see who noticed him. He already knew. The maitre d's voice trembled as he greeted him. The manager appeared out of nowhere. And just like that, the air changed, thickened, like every molecule in the room had suddenly learned fear. Lorenzo sat in the far corner booth, alone. The same table no one else ever used. And then, the manager caught Elena's eye. "Table 12, he said. "He's yours tonight. Handle it perfectly." Her stomach dropped. She nodded, because that's what you did when your boss told you something that wasn't really a request. She took a deep breath, picked up the wine list, and walked toward the corner booth. The sound of her heels on marble echoed softly. Each step brought her closer to him, to that presence that seemed to pull gravity toward itself. He didn't look up at first. He was scrolling through something on his phone, eyes half-lidded, posture unnervingly relaxed. Then the scent reached him. He inhaled once, faintly, then again, deeper. And when his gaze finally lifted to meet hers, the world seemed to fall silent. The pianist's music faded. Conversations stilled. Even the rain outside paused, as if waiting to see what would happen next. Elena froze under his stare. Those eyes, cold, calculating, were suddenly filled with something else. Recognition. Shock. A memory so sharp it looked like pain. He set down the glass in his hand. And then, in a low, controlled voice that cut through the silence, he said, "Everyone, out." At first, no one moved. It didn't sound like a threat. But something in his tone, that quiet, absolute authority, made everyone understand it wasn't a suggestion. Out, he repeated, this time quieter. Deadlier. Chairs scraped. Forks clattered. People left their meals, their drinks, their laughter, everything. Within moments, the restaurant was empty. Every guest, every staff member, gone. Except for Elena. And Lorenzo De Luca. He stood slowly, every motion deliberate, his gaze never leaving her. Do you have any idea what you're wearing? He asked, his voice calm but tight like he was holding something back. Elena swallowed. It's Perfume. My grandmother's. His jaw tensed. Her name. Elena's voice faltered. Isadora Cruz. Silence. He stared at her, really stared, as if the name had shattered something inside him. Then he turned away, pressing a hand against his mouth, breathing hard through his nose. She didn't move. Couldn't. Finally, he said quietly, "Lock the doors." Her heart stumbled. What? He looked at her again, eyes darker now, full of something she couldn't name. Lock them. Please. Because once you understand what that perfume means, you won't feel safe with them open. The rain pounded harder against the glass. Lightning flashed. And in that strange silence that followed, Elena did the unthinkable. She turned the key. Click. The sound echoed through the empty restaurant like a warning she couldn't take back. They say every story has a moment, a single heartbeat when everything changes. For Elena, it wasn't when he cleared the room. It was when she locked that door. Because from that instant forward, she wasn't just a waitress serving tables. She was part of something old, something dangerous, and something she was never meant to find. If you were in Elena's place, standing alone with a man who spoke like a king and looked at you like you were a ghost from his past, would you have locked the doors or walked away? Tell me in the comments. What would you have done?
Hey, before we continue, if you're feeling the story so far, please tap that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this with someone who loves deep stories too. And let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Now let's return to the moment everything changed.
The rain outside grew louder, hammering against the glass walls of Valenti's as if trying to warn her. Elena stood frozen by the door, her fingers still trembling from turning the key. Across the room, Lorenzo De Luca watched her in silence. He had the kind of stillness that wasn't peace, it was control, the dangerous kind that could erupt at any moment. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Why are you doing this? Lorenzo didn't answer right away. He walked slowly toward the window, his reflection glowing faintly against the glass. The streetlights painted his silhouette in gold and shadow. When I was a boy, he said finally, there was a scent my mother used to wear. I haven't smelled it in over 30 years, until tonight. Elena's throat tightened. You think I knew her? He turned to her then, and for the first time since he'd walked in, the mask cracked. Pain flickered across his face. Regret. And something else. You wear her scent exactly, he said quietly. The same perfume. The same notes. The same ghost. Elena didn't know what to say. The way he looked at her wasn't how a stranger looked at a waitress. It was the way someone looked at a memory that shouldn't exist. She took a careful step closer. Who is she? He studied her face, as if the answer might already be there. Then he spoke, his words deliberate, heavy. Isadora Cruz, he said. That was her name before she disappeared. Elena felt her stomach drop. My grandmother? Lorenzo nodded once, his jaw tightening. She vanished from my family's world before I was even 20. No one ever told me why. No one dared. I searched for her for years. All I had left was the scent she wore. He looked down, hands curling into fists at his sides. And tonight, you walked in wearing it. Elena's heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Her grandmother, gone for decades, always secretive about the past. And now this man, this mafia boss, was saying he'd known her? That she'd been part of his world? This doesn't make sense, she whispered. She was a schoolteacher, not. She couldn't finish the sentence. Not part of this. Not part of you. Lorenzo moved closer. People are rarely just one thing, Elena. Sometimes they build new lives to escape old ones. Her mind spun. Escape from what? His eyes met hers. From men like me. The truth of it sank in like a blade. He didn't say it with pride, he said it like confession. Elena wanted to speak, to demand answers, but something in his expression stopped her. Behind the power, behind the control, she saw grief, real grief, the kind that doesn't fade, only hides. He took a slow breath, as if steadying himself. When Isadora left, she took something with her, something our family swore they'd recover. I never knew what it was. But seeing you tonight, wearing her scent, I think I finally understand. He pointed gently to her wrist. That perfume isn't just perfume. It's a key. And whoever holds it inherits her unfinished story. Elena shook her head. I don't know anything about a key. I just wanted to survive another shift. I don't belong in your story. Lorenzo stepped closer again. Close enough that she could smell the faint trace of cedar and smoke on him. Close enough that his voice dropped to a whisper. You're already in it. Silence. The lights flickered from a flash of lightning outside, briefly plunging the restaurant into darkness. When they came back on, the world felt smaller, like the city had vanished, leaving only this moment between them. Lorenzo's gaze softened. Sit. Please. Let me tell you what I know. Something in his tone, not command this time, but sincerity, made her obey. She slid into the nearest chair, hands folded tightly in her lap, trying to stop them from shaking. He sat across from her. No table between them now. No distance. When I was 16, he began. My father was still head of the De Luca family. He ran everything, the ports, the money, the city's underground. And in that world, there were few people brave enough to say no to him. He looked down at his hands. But your grandmother did. Elena blinked. Isadora. He nodded. She worked for my mother. As a perfumer. She created scents for the family's private collection, fragrances no one outside our circle ever wore. Until she created one for herself. The one I'm wearing? Yes, he said quietly. She called it solace. My mother said it reminded her of home, of peace. But my father called it dangerous. Because it didn't belong to him. Elena leaned forward. Dangerous? It's just a perfume. Lorenzo's eyes met hers again, dark, unyielding. In my family, nothing is just anything. Every creation, every scent, every secret, it all means ownership. Power. She refused to sell the formula. She said it wasn't meant to be bought, only passed to those who understood love. He paused, the faintest hint of emotion catching in his throat. My father tried to take it. And that's when she vanished. The words hit her like thunder. Elena could almost see it, a woman in her 20s, bold enough to walk away from a man powerful enough to erase people with a word. She left everything behind, Lorenzo said. Her work, her name, her world. But she left behind a mystery too. She took the perfume. And for 30 years, no one ever wore it again. Until tonight. The silence that followed felt alive. Elena couldn't stop shaking. So what now? She asked softly. Lorenzo's gaze deepened, studying her face as if memorizing it. Now, he said, you tell me why fate brought her granddaughter to my table. Elena's lips parted, but no words came out. She didn't know why she was there. She didn't even know what she'd stepped into. But she knew one thing for certain, nothing about her life would ever be simple again. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You look like her, he murmured. Same eyes. Same courage. Same way of hiding pain behind calm. Her breath caught. You knew her that well? He nodded once. Well enough to never forget her. The way he said it, quiet, reverent, almost broken, made something shift in her chest. He wasn't just talking about business. He was talking about love. Elena's heart ached with questions she was too afraid to ask. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she heard her grandmother's voice again. When someone recognizes the scent, you'll understand why I kept you safe. Safe from what? She looked at the man in front of her, the one who could command silence with a word, who spoke of love like a ghost still haunting him, and for the first time, she realized what her grandmother might have meant. Maybe safety wasn't about protection. Maybe it was about distance. Lorenzo broke the silence. There's more you need to hear. But not tonight. You're not ready. He stood and moved to unlock the door. Go home, Elena. And don't wear that perfume again. She rose slowly, her heart thundering. Why? He looked back over his shoulder. Because the last woman who wore it changed my life. And the next one might end it. The lock clicked. The rain had stopped. The streets outside were empty. Elena stepped out into the humid night air, her mind spinning with everything she'd heard and the weight of everything left unsaid. As the door closed behind her, she looked down at her wrists where the scent still lingered. It no longer felt like perfume. It felt like a secret burning its way into her skin. And in that moment, one question echoed through her thoughts like thunder. If her grandmother had been part of his world once, was Elena destined to become part of it too? Would you have walked away that night or stayed to learn the truth about the man who knew your family's deepest secret? Tell me what your heart would have done. Sleep didn't come that night. Elena lay in her tiny apartment, staring at the cracked ceiling as the echo of his voice kept circling in her mind. The last woman who wore it changed my life. The next one might end it. No matter how many times she repeated those words, they didn't lose their weight. They only grew heavier. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the air still felt charged thick with something she couldn't name. She turned her wrist toward her face, breathing in the last trace of the perfume. It was faint now, almost gone. And yet, every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. Lorenzo De Luca. The man who'd cleared a room with a whisper. The man who claimed to have loved her grandmother. The man who said the scent she wore could destroy him. It should have terrified her. But instead, it fascinated her. Because deep down, beneath the confusion and the fear, was a question she couldn't silence. What else had her grandmother hidden from her? By morning, the world looked normal again. Sunlight over the bay, the sound of traffic, the rhythm of life returning to its usual beat. Elena dressed for work, tying her hair up and packing her things. But when she reached for the crystal perfume bottle on her dresser, she hesitated. Lorenzo's warning echoed in her head. Don't wear it again. Her fingers hovered above the glass. Then she whispered softly, I need answers, Abuela. And if this is the only way to get them. She dabbed a drop on her wrist. The scent bloomed instantly, warm, dark, familiar. A connection across time. A whisper from the past. She didn't know it yet, but that single decision, wearing the perfume again, would change everything. When she arrived at Valenti's, the air was different. Tense. Quiet. Too quiet. The manager avoided her eyes. The maitre d' whispered behind his hand. Even the kitchen staff, who usually teased her every morning, fell silent when she walked in. Elena frowned. What's going on? No one answered. Then she saw him. Lorenzo De Luca. Sitting at the same corner booth. Alone again. Her breath caught. He was early, too early. It wasn't even lunchtime yet. He looked up the moment she walked in, as if he'd known exactly when she'd arrive. Elena, he said, his voice calm but unreadable. We need to talk. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away. To quit, to vanish, to run. But curiosity, that relentless, Dangerous curiosity rooted her in place. She walked toward him slowly. You said last night I shouldn't come back. I said you shouldn't wear that perfume, he corrected softly. But you did. And now you've made a choice you can't undo. Her pulse quickened. What does that mean? He leaned back in his seat, eyes locked on hers. It means someone else knows. Elena froze. Knows what? That you exist, Lorenzo said. That Isadora Cruz had a granddaughter. And that she's wearing the scent they've been hunting for over 3 decades. The words landed like ice in her veins. Who are they? Lorenzo's gaze darkened. The ones who never forgave her for leaving. Elena's chest tightened. You mean your family? He didn't deny it. He just said quietly, they think that perfume was more than a scent. They believe it contains something valuable, something that belonged to the DeLuca name. If they realize who you are, they won't stop until they take it from you. Elena shook her head. But I don't have anything. He studied her closely. You have her blood. That's enough. The air between them thickened again, the way it had the night before, that strange, magnetic pulse she couldn't explain. She wanted to hate him, to scream that he was lying. But something in his eyes, the quiet sincerity beneath the danger, made her believe him. He leaned forward, voice low. You need to come with me. I can protect you. Elena took a step back. Protect me? You're one of them. I'm not like them, he said, his tone sharper now. I've spent my life cleaning up their messes. But this, he gestured toward her wrist. This is different. They won't stop, Elena. And once they realize you're the key to what she left behind, they'll come for you. Her heart pounded. Then tell me what she left. Lorenzo hesitated. And that silence told her everything. He didn't know. He was as lost in this mystery as she was. I've been searching for that answer for 30 years, he said quietly. And now I think the only way to find it is through you. Elena stared at him, struggling to breathe. Her grandmother's perfume. A family's hidden war. And now her life caught between them. She whispered, You're asking me to trust you. Why should I? His gaze softened. Because if I wanted to hurt you, Elena, I wouldn't have cleared that restaurant last night. I'd have let them take you before you ever knew why. The honesty in his voice made something stir deep inside her, not comfort, not safety, but recognition. The kind that said their stories were already tangled, whether she liked it or not. He stood, slipping a folded note across the table toward her. If you change your mind, come here tonight. Midnight. Alone. She didn't take it. She just watched him walk out, the weight of his words pressing down on her like thunder before a storm. When he disappeared into the street, she finally looked down at the note. A single address. And beneath it, one line written in ink that looked like it had been pressed too hard. Everything your grandmother died for is waiting there. That night, she stood in front of her mirror, holding the perfume bottle in one hand and the note in the other. The city lights flickered outside her window. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. She could still hear his voice, deep, controlled, haunted. Come at midnight. Alone. Her reflection stared back at her, uncertain. Maybe she was walking into a trap. Maybe she was walking into her past. But she knew she couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. Elena slipped the note into her pocket, took one last look at herself in the mirror, and whispered, Abuela, if this is the truth you wanted me to find, guide me. Then she stepped out into the night. Sometimes fate doesn't knock, it whispers. And when it does, you either listen, or spend your life wondering what you missed. If you were Elena, standing in that dim apartment with a secret calling your name, would you have gone to meet him, or stayed behind, pretending life was still normal? Tell me what your heart says. Midnight found Elena standing in front of an old mansion on the edge of the city. The address from Lorenzo's note had led her here, to a forgotten estate surrounded by iron gates and overgrown ivy, its windows glowing faintly through the fog. She hesitated at the entrance. The air smelled of rain-soaked earth and jasmine, faint but familiar, like a ghost brushing against her memory. A voice drifted from the shadows. "You came." She turned sharply. Lorenzo stepped out from beneath a tree, his coat damp from the mist, his expression unreadable. "I almost didn't," she said quietly. "But I need to know." He nodded once, as if he'd expected that answer. "Then let's not waste time. What I'm about to show you is never meant to be found." He led her through the creaking gates. The iron groaned like an old warning. Inside, the path curved toward the mansion's entrance, where two massive doors stood half open, swaying gently in the wind. They stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of dust, leather, and something faintly sweet, perfume, faint but unmistakable. The same perfume she wore. Elena froze. "You smell that?" Lorenzo nodded. "It's been here for years." This was her workshop. Her heart skipped. "My grandmother's?" He gestured toward a set of stairs leading down into the cellar. "She worked here before she disappeared. What you'll see below, it's what my father tried to erase." The steps creaked under their weight as they descended. The air grew colder, the light dimmer. At the bottom, the cellar opened into a small room lined with shelves of glass bottles, hundreds of them. Some labeled, some blank, some shattered. At the center stood an old wooden workbench, covered in dust and dried roses. Elena ran her fingers along the table's surface. This was hers. Lorenzo stood beside her, his voice low. "She made sense for my mother here. But she also made one for herself, the one you're wearing." That was the beginning of the end. He picked up an old notebook, its pages yellowed with time. "Look at this." Elena leaned in. Inside, the handwriting was delicate and slanted, her grandmother's. Notes, sketches, formulas. But what caught her attention wasn't the perfume recipes. It was a series of lines written in bold ink near the bottom of a page. "He thinks I made this for him. But I made it to protect her." Elena frowned. "Protect her? Who's her?" Lorenzo looked at her with quiet certainty. "You." Her breath caught. "Me? That's impossible. I wasn't even born." "She must have known," he said. "Maybe not you exactly, but someone who would carry her legacy." The scent wasn't meant to be worn. It was meant to mark you, a bloodline protected by the formula only she understood. Elena tried to make sense of it, but her mind spun faster with every word. "My grandmother wasn't a scientist or a spy. She was just." Lorenzo cut in softly. "A woman with secrets powerful men would kill for. Don't ever underestimate that." A sound interrupted them, a faint creak upstairs. Lorenzo's hand went to his jacket. "We're not alone." Elena's pulse shot up. "What do you mean?" He motioned for silence. They listened. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Lorenzo stepped toward the stairs. "Stay here." But before he could move further, the lights above flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the room. "Elena," he whispered. "Don't move." Something crashed upstairs, glass shattering, footsteps running. Then silence again. Elena's breathing quickened. She could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Moments later, a faint glow returned, the flicker of Lorenzo's lighter. He scanned the room, his eyes sharp, alert. "They were here," he said. "Someone followed you." "Me?" she said, trembling. "I didn't tell anyone where I was going." "They didn't need you to," he replied grimly. "They tracked the scent." Elena stared at him, realizing what he meant. The perfume. Her grandmother's perfume. "They found me because of this," she whispered. Lorenzo nodded. "That perfume isn't just a memory, Elena. It's a signature. And anyone connected to my father's old network can recognize it." He glanced toward the shattered glass near the door. "We have to move. They won't stop until they get what she left behind." Elena's voice broke. What did she leave? Tell me. He turned to her, fire in his eyes. A formula, hidden somewhere in her work. My father believed it held more than fragrance, something that could manipulate emotion, influence behavior. Power beyond imagination if perfected. Elena's pulse raced. That's impossible. He gave a bitter smile. That's what I told him once. But I've seen what her creations could do. My mother wore one of her early scents. After that, she was never the same. Obedient. Docile. Like the fragrance rewired her will. The words chilled her. Are you saying my grandmother? No, he said quickly. I'm saying she realized what she'd created and tried to destroy it. That's why she ran. Elena took a step back, her mind swirling. So what am I? A legacy? A target? He looked at her with quiet resolve. You're both. But you also might be the one who ends this. Before she could respond, the cellar door above slammed shut with a violent bang. Lorenzo grabbed her hand. Move. They ran to the far corner, where an old storage hatch led into a narrow tunnel. The smell of earth filled the air as they descended. Behind them, footsteps echoed again, closer, faster. The tunnel stretched out in darkness, the only light coming from Lorenzo's lighter. Their breaths came fast, uneven. When they finally emerged into an alley behind the estate, the night air hit them like a slap. Elena doubled over, gasping. Who are they? Lorenzo shook his head. People who've been waiting for this night for a long time. He reached into his coat and handed her the old notebook. Your grandmother's words. Keep this safe. It's the only thing they want. She stared at the notebook in her hands. Why give it to me? Because I can't protect both you and it, he said. And if I'm gone, they'll come for you anyway. You need to know what's inside. Elena held the book to her chest, feeling its weight, not just paper and ink, but history, blood, and danger intertwined. He met her gaze, his tone softening. From this point on, every choice you make matters. Whatever she started, whatever she was protecting, it's yours now. The city lights flickered in the distance. Sirens wailed faintly somewhere far off. Elena took a shaky breath. Then I have to finish it. For her. Lorenzo's lips curved faintly, half pride, half warning. Just don't lose yourself doing it. The DeLuca world doesn't give back what it takes. She looked up at him, the man who had once terrified her now standing like her only anchor in the storm. And for a fleeting second, she saw something in his eyes that scared her more than all the danger around them. Trust. Real, dangerous, human trust. They say when you search for truth, it doesn't just reveal, it tests you. It asks what you're willing to lose in exchange for what you want to know. The next morning, the sun felt wrong, too bright, too calm for what Elena had lived through the night before. She hadn't slept. Not even for a moment. The old notebook sat on her kitchen table like a silent witness, its worn cover catching the early light. She'd wiped the dust from it, traced the initials IC burned faintly into the leather, and read those haunting words again. He thinks I made this for him. But I made it to protect her. Her. That single word had torn through her like lightning. Elena turned another page. Most of the entries were perfume formulas, ratios, notes, sketches of flowers, and long lists of ingredients. But in between them were fragments of something else. Words that didn't belong in a perfumer's diary. Coordinates. Dates. Short-coded phrases. 12 keys. 12 cents. One truth. If they find me, hide it in blood. The garden remembers. Elena frowned. The garden, she whispered to herself. Before she could piece it together, a soft knock broke the silence. Her body tensed. She moved toward the door slowly, heart thundering. Elena, came a familiar voice. She opened the door, and there he was. Lorenzo DeLuca. But this time, he didn't look composed or in control. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair slightly disheveled, his jaw set tight. "They're moving faster than I thought," he said. "You're not safe here." She crossed her arms. "You said that last night." "And I was right," he said sharply. "My father's men raided the estate minutes after we escaped. Someone tipped them off." Elena's pulse quickened. "But you said the family didn't know I existed." "They didn't," he replied, glancing past her shoulder as if expecting danger. "Until one of them saw you with me. And now they'll assume you have what they've been searching for." Elena hesitated. "Then maybe you should take the notebook." "They want your family's secrets, not mine." His eyes hardened. "No, that notebook belongs to you now. You're the only one she trusted, even after death." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've arranged somewhere safe. But you have to come with me. Now." Every instinct screamed against it. She wanted to trust him, but trust was a dangerous thing when the man offering it carried darkness in his veins. Still, she saw something in him that silenced her doubt, not the mafia boss the city feared, but the boy who had once searched for her grandmother and never found her. "Where are we going?" she asked softly. He looked at her, almost like he didn't want to say it. "To the garden." Elena froze. That word again. The same one in her grandmother's notes. She grabbed the notebook and followed him. They drove for nearly an hour, leaving the city behind. The skyline faded into rolling hills, then into a quiet countryside where the air smelled of citrus and rain. Lorenzo didn't speak much during the drive. He kept glancing in the mirrors, checking for cars behind them. His silence wasn't empty, it was protective. Focused. Finally, the road narrowed into a dirt path lined with olive trees. At the end stood a wrought iron gate covered in vines. Beyond it lay a sprawling estate, long abandoned, the gardens overrun, but strangely beautiful, wild roses tangled with ivy, marble statues half buried in moss. "This was hers," Lorenzo said quietly. "Before she vanished, your grandmother lived here for a time. My family called it La Giardino Silenzioso, the Silent Garden." Elena stared in awe. "It's beautiful. It's a graveyard of secrets," he murmured. "And somewhere in there, she left the truth." They stepped through the gate. The air smelled of damp soil and forgotten flowers. Elena's eyes scanned the overgrowth. "How will we find anything in this?" Lorenzo held out his hand. "Trust me." She hesitated, then took it. His hand was warm, steady. They followed a path toward a cracked stone fountain at the garden's center. Water still trickled faintly from its broken mouth. Around it were fragments of marble benches and fallen petals. Lorenzo crouched beside the fountain, brushing away leaves. "My mother told me once that Isadora used to sit here every morning, mixing scents by hand. She said the air itself smelled like memory." Elena knelt beside him. "My grandmother used to say that too, that scents were stories you could never unhear." He looked at her, surprised by how much she sounded like the woman he'd once known. She was right. Then his expression changed sharp, alert. "Look." Etched faintly into the base of the fountain were markings, coordinates. Elena opened the notebook, flipping to a page she'd seen earlier. The same numbers were written there, underlined 3 times. "It matches," she whispered. They dug carefully through the soil beside the fountain, brushing away roots and gravel until Elena's hand hit something solid, a small, rusted tin box. Her pulse raced as she pried it open. Inside lay a glass vial, sealed tight and filled with pale golden liquid. Lorenzo's eyes darkened. "Another scent." Elena held it up, mesmerized. "Is this what they're after?" He took a slow breath. "If it's what I think it is, yes." She turned the vial over in her hand, noticing faint letters carved into the glass. "It's engraved." He leaned closer, reading aloud. "Veritas." "The truth," she whispered. Lorenzo exhaled, a strange mix of relief and dread crossing his face. She named it after what she wanted most: freedom from lies. He looked at her. Elena, whatever's inside that vial, it's more than perfume. It's proof. Maybe even a weapon. We have to. A gunshot cut through his words. The sound echoed through the garden, sharp and final. Birds scattered from the trees. Lorenzo's head snapped up. Get down. He pulled her behind the fountain as another shot rang out, shattering a marble statue near them. Elena's hands trembled around the vial. They found us. Lorenzo drew his gun, scanning the trees. Stay low. Shadows moved beyond the hedges, 3 men, armed, advancing. Elena's heart hammered. What do we do? His gaze flicked toward her, calm despite the chaos. You run when I tell you to. Don't stop until you reach the car. No, she said, voice breaking. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice. Another shot hit the fountain. Shards of stone flew past them. Lorenzo fired back, precise and silent, covering her as they crawled toward the exit. But as Elena reached the garden path, she felt something sharp tear through her shoulder. The vial slipped from her fingers, rolling across the ground. Elena! Lorenzo caught her before she fell, his arm wrapping around her protectively. Blood soaked through her sleeve. Stay with me, he said urgently. She tried to speak, but her vision blurred. The vial. He looked, it was gone. One of the men had it, retreating into the darkness. Rage flashed in Lorenzo's eyes. No! He lifted her into his arms and ran. The gunfire followed, echoing through the garden, until they burst through the gate and into the night. Only when they reached the car did he finally let her breathe. Elena clutched her wounded arm, fighting dizziness. Did they take it? He nodded grimly. Yes. And now, they'll kill to protect what's inside. Tears welled in her eyes. Then what was the point of any of this? He turned to her, his voice low but fierce. Because now I know who betrayed us. Elena blinked. What? Lorenzo's jaw tightened. Someone inside my own circle knew about you, about the notebook, the garden. There's only one person who could have leaked it. Who? He met her gaze, and the fury in his eyes made her shiver. My brother. They say the truth never comes quietly. It arrives like a storm, loud, violent, and impossible to stop. The car sped through the narrow countryside roads, tires cutting through puddles, headlights slicing the fog like knives. Elena pressed her injured shoulder, blood seeping through the bandage Lorenzo had wrapped hastily around it. Pain pulsed through her arm, but it wasn't the wound that hurt the most, it was everything that came with it. Her grandmother's secret. The stolen vial. And now the revelation that the man trying to save her had been betrayed by his own blood. Lorenzo's jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Your wound's deep but not fatal, he said, his voice low and controlled. You'll need stitches when we get to the safe house. Elena stared out the window, her reflection pale in the glass. Who is he? My brother, Lorenzo said. Matteo De Luca. The heir before I was. He disappeared from the family years ago after my father's death. I thought he wanted nothing to do with our world. He glanced at her. But it seems he's been watching all along. Elena's voice trembled. And now he has the vial. Lorenzo nodded grimly. Which means he has what your grandmother died to protect. The silence that followed was thick, the kind that feels heavier than words. Finally, Elena whispered, You think he'll use it? Lorenzo didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was barely audible. He's not after power. He's after me. She turned to him. Because of your father? He nodded once. Matteo believes I stole the life that should have been his. The inheritance, the empire, everything. The truth is, I never wanted it. But in our world, you don't choose what you inherit. He looked away, his tone hardening. And now he'll burn everything to the ground just to take it back. Elena's fingers tightened around the notebook resting on her lap. Then we need to find him first. Lorenzo gave a short, humorless laugh. You've already been shot once, and you still want to chase the man trying to kill us? Her eyes flashed with quiet defiance. If my grandmother's secret is what started all this, then I won't run from it. I owe her that much. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. You remind me of her more every hour. They reached the safe house just before dawn, a secluded villa hidden behind a wall of cypress trees. Inside, the rooms were quiet, dimly lit, furnished only with what was necessary. Lorenzo guided her to a chair, carefully unwrapping the bandage. His hands were steady, but his face was tense. This might sting, he said, cleaning the wound. Elena bit back a sound, forcing herself not to flinch. Why do you care so much? She asked suddenly. About all this. About me. He paused, looking up at her. Because your grandmother saved my life once. Her breath caught. She did. He nodded. My father ordered her to create a scent that could manipulate emotion. Something that could make a man obedient. She refused. When my father found out, he wanted her punished. I was only 18. I helped her escape. Elena's eyes softened. You helped her disappear. He nodded. I thought I'd never see her again. But when I saw you wearing that scent, it felt like time folded back. She lowered her gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. And now you're saving her granddaughter. His hand brushed her shoulder lightly, lingering just long enough for her to feel the warmth of his touch. Maybe this is my penance. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, it was fragile. Two people standing at the edge of something neither dared name. Then Lorenzo's phone vibrated. He checked the screen, his expression darkening. It's Matteo. Elena's blood ran cold. He called you. Lorenzo stood slowly, his voice flat. He doesn't call to talk. He calls to play. He answered, switching to speaker. Brother, came a smooth, mocking voice. You've been busy. Lorenzo's tone was ice. You took something that doesn't belong to you. I took what's rightfully ours, Matteo replied. Father's work. Isadora's creation. You were too blinded by guilt to see its worth. It destroyed our family, Lorenzo said. No, brother, Matteo corrected. You did. There was silence, the kind that cuts deeper than words. Then Matteo's voice dropped softer, almost taunting. You shouldn't have involved the girl. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. If you touch her. I won't have to, Matteo interrupted. She's already marked. The scent on her skin, the blood on her sleeve, she's a trail leading straight to you. The same way as Adora led father to ruin. Elena felt her stomach twist. Lorenzo's voice turned deadly calm. What do you want? Matteo chuckled. I want you to watch history repeat itself. Come to where it ended, the old port at dawn. Bring her if you dare. Leave her if you're afraid. Either way, it ends tonight. The line went dead. Elena stared at Lorenzo, her pulse racing. You can't go. It's a trap. He holstered his gun. Every choice in this world is a trap. What matters is who walks out of it alive. She stepped in front of him, blocking his way. If you go, I go. His eyes flashed with frustration. You're injured. I'm not sitting here waiting to find out how it ends, she said fiercely. My grandmother didn't run from this, and neither will I. Lorenzo's anger broke into something softer, admiration, maybe even fear. You're going to get yourself killed. She looked at him steadily. Then you'll have to make sure I don't. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, finally, he nodded. All right. But if we go together. By the time they reached the port, the first light of dawn was bleeding across the horizon. The docks were empty, silent except for the soft crash of waves against the pylons. Lorenzo stepped out first, scanning the shadows. Elena followed, the notebook clutched to her chest. The scent of salt and iron hung heavy in the air, and faintly beneath it, something else. A hint of her grandmother's perfume. Lorenzo stiffened. He's here. A figure stepped out from the shadows, tall and composed, Matteo De Luca. He looked like Lorenzo, but colder. His suit immaculate, his smile cruel. Well, Matteo said softly, the ghost brings her ghost. Lorenzo moved between them. Let her go. She has nothing to do with this. Matteo's eyes gleamed. She has everything to do with this. She's the last proof that father was wrong about Isadora. The scent didn't destroy him, love did. He held up the vial, the one he'd stolen. The golden liquid shimmered in the morning light. Elena's breath caught. Veritas. Matteo smiled. Exactly. The truth. And the truth, dear brother, is that we were never meant to share this world. He uncapped the vial. Lorenzo drew his gun instantly. Don't. Matteo's smile didn't waver. If this scent truly bends emotion, let's see whose heart breaks first. He tipped the vial, letting the liquid fall onto the wooden boards. The air filled with the scent, warm, golden, intoxicating. Elena felt it immediately, a rush through her chest, her mind spinning. Memories, emotions, sensations that weren't hers flashed like lightning. Her grandmother's voice. A man's laughter. A gunshot. A promise whispered in the dark. She stumbled, clutching her head. Lorenzo. He caught her before she fell, his own breath heavy, eyes dilating. It's affecting us both, he gritted. It's not just perfume, it's memory distilled. Matteo laughed, the sound echoing across the docks. Do you see now? She didn't create power. She created truth. And truth destroys. He raised his gun aimed not at Lorenzo, but at Elena. Lorenzo's heart stopped. No. The shot rang out. Pain tore through the air, but it wasn't Elena who fell. Lorenzo staggered, clutching his side, blood seeping through his shirt. Lorenzo, she screamed, catching him as he dropped to his knees. Matteo lowered his weapon, smirking. One De Luca for another. Balance restored. He turned to leave, but Elena stood, fury burning through the pain, through the fear, through everything. You think this ends with you, she said, voice shaking. But you don't understand. The truth doesn't die, it remembers. She grabbed the spilled vial, crushed the glass in her hand, and hurled it into the sea. The scent burst into the wind, gone. Matteo froze, his composure breaking. What have you done? Elena met his gaze, fire in her eyes. I ended it. For the first time, Matteo looked afraid. He turned and vanished into the mist as the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. Elena dropped beside Lorenzo, tears streaming down her face. Stay with me, please. His eyes fluttered open, pain flickering across his features. You destroyed it. Yes, she whispered, gripping his hand. It's over. He managed a faint smile. No, Elena. It's just beginning. They say love and truth both demand a price. And sometimes, when the night is darkest, the only thing left to hold on to is the hand that refused to let you fall. The sirens grew louder as the first orange light of dawn spilled across the water. Elena pressed her hand against Lorenzo's wound, her palms slick with his blood. Stay with me, she whispered, her voice trembling. Just stay. He tried to speak, but his words came out in fragments. You shouldn't have come back for me. Stop talking, she said fiercely. You're not dying here. His gaze softened despite the pain. You sound like her. Like who? Isadora, he murmured. She said the same thing once, when I thought I wouldn't make it out alive. Elena swallowed hard, her heart aching at the sound of her grandmother's name. She pressed her scarf against his side, desperate to stop the bleeding. The sirens were close now, police, ambulance, or maybe both. She didn't know. Didn't care. All that mattered was keeping him conscious. "You saved me," she whispered. "Now let me save you." He closed his eyes, voice faint. "You already have." She wanted to cry, to scream, to do anything that would keep him awake, but the exhaustion in his face broke her. The paramedics arrived minutes later, their voices sharp, urgent. They lifted him onto a stretcher as she followed close behind, refusing to let go of his hand until they forced her back. "Ma'am, please, we have to move," one of them said. "I'm going with him," she insisted. The medic hesitated, saw the look in her eyes, and nodded. "Fine. But stay out of the way." They sped toward the nearest hospital, the city blurring past the windows. Elena sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall beneath the oxygen mask. Every beep of the monitor felt like a battle between life and death. And for the first time since this began, she let herself feel it, all of it. The fear, the loss, the love she hadn't meant to find. Hours passed. By the time the doctor came out, Elena's eyes were red from sleeplessness. "He's stable," the doctor said. "You can see him soon." Relief washed through her so powerfully she nearly collapsed. When she was finally allowed into the room, Lorenzo was pale but breathing steadily. His eyes opened as she entered. "You're still here," he said softly. "Of course I am," she replied, taking a seat beside his bed. "Where else would I be?" He smiled faintly. "I thought maybe you'd run. That's what most people do after seeing what I am." "I've seen what you are," she said gently. "But I've also seen who you are. And those aren't the same thing." His gaze lingered on her, heavy with unspoken emotion. "You don't owe me anything, Elena." She shook her head. "You don't understand. This isn't about owing. It's about truth, the same thing my grandmother fought for, the same thing you've been trying to protect your whole life. And I'm not running from it anymore." He watched her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand. "Then you need to know the truth about what comes next," he said. She frowned. "What do you mean?" Lorenzo's eyes darkened, pain flickering in their depths, not just physical pain, but something older, heavier. "My brother won't stop. You destroyed the vial, but the formula still exists. It's in your grandmother's notebook." Elena's heart sank. "I thought you said it was just notes, incomplete work." "It is," he said. "But to the wrong people, that's enough. Matteo will come after it, and after you." She looked down, her fingers tightening around his. "Then we stop running. We end it for good." Lorenzo studied her, this woman who had walked into his life by accident, who carried his past in her scent and his future in her defiance. "You sound like her again," he whispered. "Then maybe I'm exactly where I'm meant to be," she said. He gave a small laugh, shaking his head. "You're too brave for your own good. And you're too stubborn to let anyone fight beside you," she countered softly. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them. The tension, the fear, the pain, it all dissolved into something quieter, deeper. She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You said truth destroys. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just reveals what's already broken." He looked at her like he wanted to believe that. Like he needed to believe that. "Elena," he said, his tone soft, almost reverent. "You don't know how much you remind me of the life I could have had." "Then take it," she said firmly. "Because it's not too late to start over. You've spent your life cleaning up your father's sins. Maybe it's time to forgive yourself." He looked at her for a long time, the weight in his chest finally cracking under the warmth in her voice. "You really think someone like me can be forgiven?" She smiled sadly. "I think that's the only reason people like us survive, because someone has to believe we can." He closed his eyes for a moment, exhaling deeply. When he opened them again, there was something new in them, not fear. Not regret. Resolve. "You're right," he said quietly. "No more running. No more ghosts. It ends tonight." Elena tilted her head. "Tonight?" He nodded. There's one place Matteo would go, one last connection to my father. If we find him before he finds us, we can end this on our terms. Then we go together, she said immediately. He smiled faintly. I was hoping you'd say that. That evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the city, Elena stood at the window of the hospital room, staring out at the skyline. The streets below glowed with golden light, cars moving like veins of fire through the heart of Miami. Her reflection stared back, tired, wounded, but unbroken. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was living someone else's story. She was writing her own. She opened the notebook again, tracing her grandmother's handwriting. At the bottom of the final page, hidden beneath the formulas and notes, she noticed faint words written in pencil. When the heart chooses love over vengeance, the scent of peace will rise. She read it over and over, the words sinking into her bones. Her grandmother hadn't created power or manipulation. She'd created choice. A symbol of control, not over others, but over oneself. That was her legacy. Elena closed the book gently and looked back at Lorenzo. She didn't make a weapon, she said softly. She made a cure. Lorenzo raised his head, confusion flickering in his eyes. A cure. For what this world does to people like you, she said. For what it did to her. And in that moment, something inside both of them shifted, a quiet, unspoken understanding that maybe love wasn't weakness after all. It was the only truth worth fighting for. They say the darkest nights are the ones that teach us how to see light again. And sometimes, when the world feels too far gone, the smallest spark of hope can change everything. The night came heavy with tension, thick air, low clouds, and the promise of something inevitable. Lorenzo stood at the edge of the pier, the city lights flickering faintly across the water like dying embers. Behind him, Elena approached, her grandmother's notebook clutched tightly to her chest. She'd bandaged her arm again, but pain no longer slowed her. Fear no longer guided her. This time, she wasn't following him, she was walking beside him. Is this where he'll come? She asked softly. Lorenzo nodded. If Matteo wants to end it, he'll do it here, where everything began. He looked out toward the horizon, his jaw tight. This is where my father made his first deal. Where he built everything we've been trying to escape. Elena stepped closer, the sea breeze tangling her hair. Then this is where it ends. He glanced at her, a look heavy with emotion, with something he couldn't name but couldn't hide either. You shouldn't be here. She smiled faintly. And yet, here I am. Lorenzo exhaled slowly, a sound caught between admiration and fear. You're too brave for this world. No, she said softly. Just tired of running from it. He was about to answer when headlights appeared in the distance, a black car approaching fast, its engine humming low and steady. Lorenzo's entire body tensed. That's him. The car stopped 20 feet away. Matteo De Luca stepped out, immaculate as ever, dark suit, silver tie, his eyes sharp as glass. Two men flanked him, both armed. Brother, Matteo said, voice smooth as silk. You look terrible. Lorenzo didn't move. You've made your point. You've spilled enough blood. End it here with me. Matteo's gaze flicked toward Elena. But why end something that's just begun? Elena's hand tightened on the notebook. You want this, she said. You want the formula? It's yours. She held it up and then, to Lorenzo's shock, tossed it into the fire barrel beside the pier. Flames roared to life, licking up the edges of the paper, consuming the pages one by one. Matteo's face twisted. No. He lunged forward, but Lorenzo blocked him, shoving him back. It's over, Matteo. Matteo's fury snapped. You never understood what she created. Father wanted control. She gave us freedom. But you were too blinded by guilt to see it. Lorenzo's voice cracked with anger. She didn't create freedom, she created temptation. Power you could never handle. They collided, brothers locked in a brutal fight that wasn't just about inheritance, it was about decades of betrayal and pain. Fists crashed, blood spilled. The sound of the sea roared around them, waves crashing against the docks as if echoing the storm within them. Elena shouted, "Stop! Both of you," but neither man heard. Lorenzo's gun slid across the wet boards. Matteo grabbed a shard of metal from the ground, his face twisted with rage. "You took everything from me, and you destroyed everything we had." Lorenzo shouted back, blocking the strike. Matteo's eyes burned with madness. "Then we end it the way Father would have wanted." He lunged, but Lorenzo moved faster, twisting the weapon from his brother's hand and driving him back toward the edge of the pier. Matteo slipped, his foot hitting the slick wood. For a heartbeat, he teetered between balance and the black water below. Lorenzo reached out, instinctively. "Matteo." Their eyes met, two men who had shared blood, pain, and the same curse of legacy. For a moment, Matteo seemed to see him, not as an enemy, but as a brother again. Then his expression softened, and he let go. He fell backward into the sea. The sound of the splash cut through the silence like thunder. Lorenzo stood frozen, chest heaving, the echo of that moment hanging heavy in the air. Elena rushed forward, gripping his arm. "Lorenzo, we have to." He shook his head. "No one survives that current. It's done." They stood there in silence as the fire behind them crackled, the last of the notebook turning to ash. Elena watched the pages curl and vanish, a lifetime of secrets dissolving into the night sky. "It's really over," she whispered. Lorenzo looked at her, the exhaustion in his eyes replaced by something quieter, peace. "It has to be." He stepped closer, his hand brushing her cheek. "You burned the only thing that could have made me powerful again." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why I did it." His lips curved, but there was sadness in it too. "You saved me from becoming my father." Elena met his gaze, her voice steady. "And you saved me from living my grandmother's fears." The moment between them hung fragile, two souls bound by fire, blood, and something far deeper than either could explain. Lorenzo exhaled slowly. "I don't know what comes next." Elena took his hand. "Then we'll find out. Together." The flames behind them died down, leaving only embers and smoke drifting into the cold air. The sea was calm again, as if it had taken its sacrifice and gone silent. For the first time since this began, Lorenzo looked free. Not as a mafia boss, not as a son, not as a brother, just a man who had finally stepped out of his own shadow. Elena stood beside him, watching the sunrise break across the horizon. Her grandmother's perfume still lingered faintly on her skin, softer now, gentler. Like the past was saying goodbye. Lorenzo turned to her. "You could leave now. Disappear. No one would blame you." She shook her head. "And go back to pretending my life was simple?" "No. You said it yourself. We don't choose what we inherit. But we can choose what we become." He smiled at that, the first real smile she'd seen from him, the kind that made her heart ache in ways she hadn't thought possible. Then he whispered, "You really are her legacy." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "No, Lorenzo. We are." They say every story has two endings, the one written in the world and the one written in the heart. And sometimes, the one written in the heart is the only one that truly matters. The sun rose slowly over the water, spreading streaks of gold, and rose across the horizon. The night that had nearly destroyed everything had finally ended. Elena stood at the pier's edge, her hair moving gently in the breeze, the scent of salt and ash in the air. Behind her, the last traces of smoke from the burnt notebook curled into the light like forgotten memories, finally leaving the earth. Lorenzo was silent beside her. His white shirt was torn, blood dried on his sleeve, his eyes distant as he watched the sea that had swallowed his brother. Neither spoke for a long time. There were no words left big enough for what they'd lived through. Finally, Elena whispered, "Do you think he's really gone?" Lorenzo's voice was low. Matteo made his choice. He followed the same path our father carved for him, power without peace. You can't survive a life built on that. Elena nodded slowly, though her heart ached. No matter what Matteo had done, he was still Lorenzo's brother. Still someone who once believed in something before greed turned him cold. Lorenzo turned to her. "You should go, Elena. You still have a chance to build something better." Her eyes softened. "And what about you?" He smiled faintly, a trace of sadness behind it. "I need to clean up what's left of this world. The family, the business, the people my father hurt. I can't walk away until I make it right." She stepped closer. "You don't have to do that alone, Elena." "I mean it," she said firmly. "You don't owe your father anything, but you owe yourself peace. And maybe we can find it together." His gaze lingered on her face, the edges of his guarded composure breaking. "You'd stay? After everything?" She reached up, touching his cheek gently. "I didn't come this far just to leave you behind." He closed his eyes for a moment, leaning into her touch like a man who had forgotten what gentleness felt like. When he opened them again, there was something new there, gratitude, warmth, and a quiet kind of love that didn't need to be spoken to be real. "I don't deserve you," he said softly. She smiled. "Then earn me." Days passed. The city moved on, unaware of the war that had ended in its shadows. The news whispered vague stories of a missing man, a mysterious fire, a shift in the Del Luca Empire. But in a quiet villa by the coast, far from the noise, life began to heal. Lorenzo recovered slowly. His strength returned, his wounds closing one scar at a time. But the change inside him ran deeper than any cut. He spent his mornings in silence now, walking along the shoreline, watching the waves crash and pull back again. It was a rhythm he understood too well, destruction and renewal, endless and necessary. Elena joined him often, barefoot on the sand, her laughter soft against the wind. The past still lingered, but it no longer ruled them. One morning, she brought something with her, a small, clear vial she'd found hidden in the lining of her grandmother's old notebook before it burned. It wasn't the same formula, just a trace of it. "I thought it was gone," Lorenzo said, staring at it in her palm. "It almost was," Elena replied. "But I realized she didn't mean for the truth to be destroyed. She meant for it to be understood." She unsealed the vial, letting the faint scent drift into the air, warm amber, wild jasmine, and something deeper. Lorenzo inhaled slowly. "It smells different." Elena smiled. "Because it's not about power anymore. It's about choice." She dabbed a drop on her wrist, then offered the bottle to him. "Do you want to remember her? Or move forward?" He looked at her, the weight of years in his eyes. Then, instead of taking the vial, he took her hand. "I remember her," he said quietly. "But I'd rather walk into the future with you." She smiled through the tears welling in her eyes. "Then let's go." That evening, they stood together on the terrace overlooking the sea, the wind soft, the air golden with the fading light. Lorenzo reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a silver bracelet. "I found this in her things," he said. "It was your grandmother's. She wore it every day." Elena looked down at it, her chest tightening. "I thought it was lost." He fastened it around her wrist, his touch gentle. "Now it's home." She blinked back tears. "Thank you." Lorenzo's voice was low. "Thank you, Elena, for reminding me that there's still good left to fight for." She leaned against him, their hands entwined as the waves crashed softly below. The world was still broken. The past still hurt. But they weren't running anymore. They were rebuilding piece by piece, scent by scent, truth by truth. Sometimes the ending of one story is just the beginning of another. Sometimes love doesn't erase the pain, it teaches you how to live with it. And sometimes peace isn't found in silence, but in the sound of two hearts that survived everything still beating in sync. Elena closed her eyes, breathing in the ocean air, and beneath it, the faintest trace of her grandmother's perfume. It didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like legacy, like forgiveness, like home. If you'd stood beside them on that terrace, watching the sea, feeling the wind, seeing how far they'd come, would you have believed in second chances? Do you believe that love can heal even the darkest pasts? Tell me what your heart says.